Hey folks, everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Rex, anything new and different to kick us off this week?
Just to let people know to check in about 30 minutes to the alt viewer page. We are going to have a new 360 project viewer up. Great thing about this viewer is it automatically does all the stitching of the images for you, so they are ready to be posted to Flickr, Facebook, etc. A few bugs that are listed in the release notes, so give it a whirl.
Sounds good. Anybody had a chance to try the 360 stuff out yet?
The uploads to place pages is we're not finished working with that. Soon.
Let's see, what else is going on? We have talked to Anchor today. He is working on the Bakes on Mesh. He's been doing viewer stuff recently and says it's going along well, so we're hoping that we'll be able to put together a project viewer for that in the not too distant future, but we'll keep you posted. Don't have all the answers in terms of how we're going to be masking out the system avatar. The first pass on that is probably just going to be like hide parts of the system avatar have corresponding mesh faces defined or something like that, but we'll see, and that'll be something we'll be kind of refine. And once we have to check that out. Probably so. I said that Anchor's working on Bakes on Mesh. He's been doing some work with the viewer this last week and said he thought it was coming along well. So we'll be trying to put together a project viewer for that, and we'll let you know when there's something to about. That was the other thing I mentioned, Polysale. No, we don't have a definition for how the secondary alpha channel would work, or if we're going to have one. The first thing to do is just to get the UI working for being able to toggle on and off the bakes on mesh part itself, and then once that's working, we can kind of refine the other aspects. So you mean LSL functions for specifying which faces on a mesh are supposed to be, uh, displaying the bake texture? Yeah, that's a interesting point. We'll probably want to talk about that. But yeah, but basically, think about it as it's a per it's a per face attribute, right? Each mesh face can request to use the bake texture instead of its current diffuse texture, and then everything else kind of falls out from that. But yeah, it's if an object is no mod, then you couldn't change it to say that it's supposed to be using baked textures. But if you do say it's supposed to be using baked textures, then you don't need mod permissions to actually change the baked textures, right? It's anything that causes the baked appearance of the avatar to update will update the mesh. Yeah, probably so. If you want to file something, I'd be happy to take a look at it. I'm sure Shaker would find it useful too.
I just have to say I'm finding what Lucy is doing over there with her Animesh very disturbing and upsetting.
Oh, sorry, that last was pretty soft. I didn't catch it.
She's sitting on top of a black man on his hands and knees. I find that very disturbing. I find it extremely offensive and racist myself. And that's what I interpret it as. It may not be what you were going for, but that's what it was.
is there an ETA on Animesh yet? There's not an ETA on Animesh. I hadn't really got to the Animesh update part yet, but not a lot of new news this week. I've basically been working on bug fixes for the last several days, primarily a thing that Lucia identified with LODs getting corrupted. That one turns out to be just a major pain to sort out. It's there may be multiple causes, but there's at least an issue with the bounding boxes getting corrupted, and then that caused the distance to get computed wrong, and then that caused the wrong LED to get selected, and on them. Probably don't want a whole saga, but anyway, it's I'm hoping I can get a fix out fairly soon that doesn't have a horrible performance impact. And we'll definitely look to try to sort that before the next project viewer update. Are you building off the commit? We'll see it. No, I thought we had it set up so the builds weren't actually easy to find anymore. Were you able to locate them? I think the latest one was, I'm running it now, just a minute. It is build 512785. So there shouldn't be a big difference on those. If you could shoot me info on how you're reproing it, I can't get that to repro using the zoom out technique anymore. I haven't played around a lot with the Animesh bit toggling approach. Okay, so it sounds like there are multiple causes then. Yeah, so you were doing the Animesh checkbox switching when you were reproing it? Okay. I wasn't able to repro that case to begin with, which is why I was mostly testing with the zooming out. But I'll take another look at it. You were just using the bikini model thing, as you cited in the original Jira. When you say 10 characters in the scene having low LODs, I'm not sure what you mean. It's like, if you have 10 of the same character, they all have low LODs, or some of them do, or? Okay. Okay, sounds good. So anyway, yeah, still plugging on that. So nothing new on land impact stuff. Hoping to get back to that once I get the LOD behaving a little more consistently. Let's see. So I guess that's it for updates. Anybody has other questions, we can chat about those. I grabbed a copy, Lucia. Is that does that just have some contents that have the issue? Carrie asked about time frame. I'm really hoping to get it out in more like the 3 months or less time frame. But if we're still in a situation where bugs are getting filed faster than I'm getting them fixed, then you can't really extrapolate a completion date based on that. Well, see, I'd much rather have you finding the bugs than have them being found out in the wild after we release, put it that way. There's a question about land impact refactoring. We don't have any numbers attached to that at all. The only, what we mentioned at the last meeting is that, we're going to be using a bit different calculation method for land impact. When Animesh first goes live, and the reason we're doing that, we talked about a bit in a forum post recently. But once Animesh is out, then we're also doing a larger undertaking to try to revise the rendering cost and land impact calculations in general. There's not any attached to that. There's set or whatever. It's going to be based on not just going up or down, but trying to be more accurate. So if things change, then some things are up a fair amount. And so if there are any changes, though, there's going to be a considerable time period of be notified about those. It's going to flip a switch and
Is Spears' voice cutting out for anyone else?
okay, well, I can try to speak up, or I can switch to typing if most people can't hear me very well.
Well, it's fine right now. Maybe it was just a momentary thing.
I think the mic is dropping off low ends. If your voice gets a little too quiet, it seems to be dropping people's voice a bit.
Okay, well, I'll try to speak up a bit, but if it's a problem, let me know. Let's see, the suggestion to try to get body makers engaged for bakes on mesh. Yeah, I think that's very important. Bakes on mesh is in very early stages right now. Obviously, we don't even have a project viewer out yet. So there's there's plenty of time to discuss these things. But first step is to get something out that works at all and is testable. Yep, feature request would be good, thanks. Regarding people that we should be trying to engage for bakes on mesh, the particular residents anybody wants to mention? It's if we have a kind of specific name of people to talk to, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say Onyx, Catwad, any of the big body, Slink. Yep. Good point. Yeah, we've got Maitreya, Beliza, Slink, TMP, Physique, Hourglass.
That'll definitely perk up the meetings if we get everybody here. The survey link is helpful. Cool.
Yeah, that's a really great website. I use that a lot when giving people suggestions of content creators to visit.
Oh yeah, Ryder's here. Ryder, Eep.
I am well on my way to actually having items that we can put in the inventory. As I've said before, once I have that in, I will round up a few regions here on Aditi and and set it up for and put out a project viewer. It will be in the next couple of weeks. I am guessing sometime in March.
So that involves simulator changes and viewer changes, right?
Simulator changes, viewer changes, some infrastructure changes that I'm doing now that I wasn't expecting.
You probably need CDN changes if you're routing requests for a new type of asset, right?
those are actually accounted for, and I believe the CDN changes are. I believe the CDN changes have been handled. This is actually inventory system. No LSL functions for this initial release. And in fact, I'm going to break get sun direction, but. Oh, I can only
Why
type
does
so fast.
make sun direction not work?
What was that?
I was just curious why it happened that you were breaking get sun direction.
Because the sun direction will now be calculated based on the sun's actual rotation based on the environment, as opposed to the Linden sun. And that will so I've disabled the since I've taken out the Linden sun, that will be you won't get that value anymore. You will be able to use it again. It won't get the value for the actual direction to the sun, Lucy. I just shorted that path to the LSL. Yes.
So you say that will work again at some point? Is this like
that will
after
work again?
It goes
Yes.
live everywhere or something?
Well, hopefully before it goes live, but once I get to the scripting sections. Yes, you will have sundials that can actually point to the sun as opposed to somewhere where the sun is likely to be. There are a few sundials out there, and I believe anything that uses there's a trying to remember the name of the method, but it gets the number of hours since midnight based on or the number of seconds since midnight based on a 4-hour day, and it makes the assumption that you are dealing with a 4-hour day. That will that that function will probably be broken. Oh yes, except you no longer have a 4-hour day. I'll just add Teflon to my hat. Well, you can still have a 4-hour day if you want one, Artin. But some people might want a 178-hour day.
We need to incorporate leap seconds in there too, I think.
Very Pirates of Penzance, Cube.
All right. Well, any other questions? We can call it a short meeting if we don't have anything else for this week.
Yes, you will be able to get the current settings in the day cycle. So you'll be able to say get environment, provide it with a variable or a list of variables, much like prim params. Yes, you are getting soon, Worley. Cube yes, you are getting the raise. Those will go in probably with Graham's atmospherics, which Worley was just asking about. You will not be able to, Neo. You will not be able to set the region's environment. Environment parameters are read-only. You will be able to set them for individual agents that are part of a experience. I hope. Hopefully, some of the UI changes will make it so that people are more willing to change their environments also. Anything else? Soon, Cube.
Yeah, can we have voxel water with reflective droplets?
That'll be V2.
the short version of the discussion on Animesh is working on bug fixes. What's holding back land impact trialing? Bug fixes.
ISO, you were asking if it's under the hood or visual aspects will change. There are a number of visual. I'm working to keep it as close to, so that by default it is as close to what we see now as possible. But there will be visual aspects that can be modified and improved from the current setting. So, for instance, if God rays are defined, those could be those those will then show up, or any of a number of other distance fog would be visually changing from what we have now. But if it's not defined, then you shouldn't see it.
I'm not sure I understand the question about implementing HUDs with the new mesh bakes. Do you mean actually putting baked textures on the HUDs, or do you mean having them be driven by scripts that are controlled by a HUD? Yeah, so the Bakes on Mesh gives you access to the current bake textures, which are basically the diffuse texture, would correspond to the diffuse texture for a mesh, a mesh object. So if there's other textures like spec maps or normal maps, those aren't going to be supplied or modified through the baking service, and so still need to be whatever means. It's possible that in the longer term we would want to extend the kinds of things that can be baked, but that's not the sort of initial goal for getting this release. Yeah, probably so. That's a good point. One of the big improvements we can get from Bakes on Mesh is just to reduce the number of textures that have to be sent around to everyone. If the stuff, if you've got textures that get composited by the baking service and then just the final result gets shipped off to you, that's much less stuff that everyone has to load. Hopefully this will help with a significant number of cases where people are using onion avatars today, but as you say, it doesn't necessarily address every use case.
use normal maps. Maybe I should rephrase. How many people that make things for the avatar or any of these other mesh avatars use normal maps? Heck, skin is probably the most important.
There was a question a little ways back about the possibility of having a mesh system avatar. The short answer is that we don't have that currently because it basically would require an additional project that, just having system avatars and and support for mesh doesn't quite give you all the tools you would need to have a mesh system avatar. System avatars have morphs that we use for some of the sliders, which there's no way to do on meshes, and of course they have baked textures, so bakes on mesh would be a prerequisite for having a mesh system avatar as well. So it's something that has been discussed, and it wouldn't be necessarily ruled out in the future, but that's why it hasn't happened yet. It would require quite a bit of replumbing on top of what we have, including requiring bakes on mesh. It's working on now. I think the bento bones give you some alternative ways to implement some of the morph-based params. I'm not sure it necessarily gives you a good solution for all of them. All right, we might as well wrap it up for the week. I think our next meeting is going to be in 2 weeks. Next week will be the first Thursday of the month when we normally have a company meeting that's a conflict. Lucia asks, raise tri-count caps above 150. You mean above 150,000? Will land impact reflect exotic tri-count usage? I'm not sure what exotic tri-count usage is. Yeah, it's pretty likely that there's still going to be a tri-count cap. I don't know how detailed a discussion we really need to be getting into kind of right at end times. Maybe we should defer this for next meeting. But the short answer is that you want the land impact to be realistic, but you also want it to be competitive with the other content that's out there. So, in a perfect world where the land impact exactly reflected the cost of the content, I don't really have a problem with the idea that there's not also a cap, but in a world where there's where a lot of the competing sort of pseudo animesh content that's out there now has performance impact and yet extremely low land impact. You kind of can't set the land impact for mesh in an entirely realistic way without making it super disadvantageous compared to that stuff. So no final answer on that yet, but I think there's kind of two competing forces on kind of how you do the land impact calculations that are going to be influencing that. Okay. You see, it needs to be a cap, but you want it to be higher than 150,000. What are you specifically advocating for? I'm curious. Yep. Well, hopefully I'll have more time to look at land impact before the next meeting. But depends how other things go. We'll keep you posted. All right. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Feel free to post things to the forum in the meantime, and otherwise we can catch up in a bit. Yep. Thanks for coming, everybody.